We're
All
gonna
right.
we're gonna go ahead and get started. It is my pleasure to introduce our spotlight speaker today, Tim Mittan. He has a variety of knowledge to share with us. He was my boss, hired me, I don't know, 15 years ago, I think.
Been a while.
Was the founding director of the Entrepreneurship Center here at SEC. He's an author, improv master, worked with the SBA in California, and a zillion other things in between. All around awesome guy. And now he is also an instructor for Southeast Community College. So, Tim, take it away.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for signing on this morning. I appreciate it. So, Brooke and I go way back, and the stories I could tell you about, not just about Brooke, but about the Entrepreneurship Center and the struggles and everything as a whole. But I got something else to talk to you about today. So, I recently, for my position at Southeast Community College, they asked me to complete an economics certificate. So I have over 18 hours of economics education now. And so I'm an economics instructor in the business program. So what I thought I would do today is talk economics to you. So I need to share this. So I know it's scary, but this is actually something that I think is extremely important. And as I used to work with businesses a lot, I would see how little they understood about the economic structure in even their communities, let alone in the United States. So, I'm not going to, I could teach you, macro and microeconomics, and I'm going to try to do that all in about 20 minutes for you and make it so that it's something that you can, grasp onto a little bit, and how you fit into our economic structure. It's actually a really big deal. So do you all know how you fit in our economic structure as a community or within the United States? That's the silence I get from the classroom as well. So it is, if you think about, our country and how it works, we actually have one of the best countries to start a business. And as I did all my entrepreneurship research and everything, and I worked with England, a big part was in England, but I've talked to people in Canada and New Zealand and Australia and Brazil and Mexico and all these other countries where you have to be approved by the government to even consider starting a business. And in the United States, all you have to do is say, I'm in business, and you are. That's probably because business owners pay the majority of the taxes, but entrepreneurs make up, whatever statistic you want to follow, but it's anywhere between the 80 and 85% of all of the business owners in the United States. And so you're in that category. And so pretty much everything that happens, either politically or, financially, will affect you in some way, shape, or form. And the one thing I love about economics is that it does not have a political backing. Everybody thinks it does. And depending on which news program you listen to, it will. But I encourage you not to get your information from a 24-hour news network. None of them. There's not a one of them that actually has valid information on it. What they do is they take a topic and then they run with it and they put it toward their leaning, And so if you want real information, you need to search for it. And that's how you find out what's going on. Can the economy be affected by the politics and the people that are in power? Yes, it can, just like in any country. So, but it doesn't mean that you have to listen to their rhetoric in order to understand it. So anyway, in entrepreneurship, today, correct knowledge of economics contributes to an understanding of how entrepreneurs and customers interact. There's a way that you make your business and get it set up so that people will come in. Well, there is an economic component to all of that. How you interact with your clients and what the product that you do and or service that you have created, that is all part of our economic structure. So this is a true definition of economics. It's the study of how individuals and societies use limited resources to satisfy unlimited wants. So the fun part about this is I used to ask people if they are a want or are they a need. Do you know what you are? Are you a want or are you a need? Do people need your product or service, or do they want your product or service? Anybody want to?
Both.
A need.
You're a need?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I would say both.
I'm going to refer to Maslow's hierarchy on this one. There's layered degrees of need.
Oh, thank you, Luke. That was exactly where I was going to go with that. So does everybody know what Maslow's hierarchy of needs is? Okay. It's this big giant triangle, and everything that's at the bottom of that triangle is a need. Anything that sustains life. So if you sell food, or if you are in shelter or clothing or safety or anything like that, you probably tend to be in the need category. So now the other thing, now Maslow is great about it breaking it down to the ultimate bottom, but in how you look at it is the way our society has created need factors. Like Brooke said that she's a need. Well, insurance in our country is a need. So education is a need. So there are parts about these components. So you can be on the fringe of a want or a need, but almost all entrepreneurs fall in the want category. So, because most people can do without you. If they can ultimately do without your service and still stay alive, you're a want. So think about that. So, and because I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who say, well, no, everybody wants my product, and everybody needs my product. Okay, which is it? Is they want it or do they need it? So if they can live without it, you are a want. So, okay. So there are parts of our economic structure. There are a lot of components to our economic structure, but these are the main factors of our economy. It's production by businesses and financial institutions. Remember, financial institutions are very important to us. The labor that works to produce these things, consumers, spending and investments by our government, and imports and exports. So this is actually called the gross domestic product. There are a few people on here that I would assume are close to my age. Does anybody remember gross national product? GNP? Yep. So that's how we used to do the accounting system for the United States. Well, now we had to be global, so now we have to be GDP, gross domestic product, and it's what you make. You count whatever is made within your borders, whether it's a U.S. company or not a U.S. company. So anyway, so one of the reasons why we have the free trade agreement throughout the United States, and that was such a big deal, is that if Canada and Mexico were not in that agreement, everything that comes from Mexico would be an import, and everything that comes in from Canada would be an import, and that's a lot of stuff. So if you look on any of our import and export data, you'll see that we do a lot with them, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that it was set up that way. So we want more exports than imports, and that's true in this. But if you find yourself in any one of these categories, which I'm assuming you will, this is how you understand where you fall into part of our economic structure. So,
should.
So part of our economic system is, what goods and services should be produced. That's the question that you asked, and that's basically supply. Quantities of goods and services that are produced, and that's the factors of production. That's huge in what we do. Scarcity. So we are in a pseudo recession right now. If you're not aware of that, you should be, because what that means is that there is a battle between supply and demand. And actually what it is right now is because we just went, so we got into a recession. It's a self-made recession. We didn't get into a recession because it was a bad economic structure. We pushed ourselves into this on purpose. And the recovery should be fairly quick, but things are starting to happen now. And what's happening is that people have gotten back to normal. Everybody's like, okay, we're out of our house. We're not wearing masks. We're vaccinated or mostly vaccinated. And we are wanting to do all the stuff that we couldn't do for a whole year. Well, the supply chain hasn't caught up yet. So there's a huge demand out there right now, and there's very little supply. That's why if you ask a contractor right now, one, they don't have anybody to work for them because we don't have any unemployment in the state. And two, they can't get lumber, they can't get sheetrock, they can't get shingles, nothing. My dentist is trying to put together a building and they can't get stone to go on the outside of the building to finish it. So all the labor stopped. Remember that, all the labor stopped for a year plus. And if any of it is coming from overseas, we're not going to have access to it for quite a while. But we, the demanders, we want it now. So as long as we're pushing for it and we pay for it, the prices will go up. So now if we have inflation. So the scarcity is there, the demand is there, and there's too much demand for the supply. So, and it's been that way since a year ago, March, when they said that we were in, basically the whole world was shutting down. And we have a tendency to overreact to everything. And that's why for whatever reason, toilet paper, Pop-Tarts, toothpaste, yeast, and flour were not available. So Pop-Tarts, that was one of them that was missing, that people couldn't buy. Not even the off-brand. It's like, there's a favorite cat food that my cat likes. It's no longer available. So, we've had to switch, and she's not happy about that. So it's interesting, the things that have been affected by all of this. So, but the thing is, it's like we are a free enterprise system, and the people hate this word, but it's true. We're a capitalist society. So it is pure and honest and true capitalism. It's a market economy. That's what it is. People use that in a negative term. So it's not. This is what it is. And if it weren't for it being a capitalist society that we live in, you wouldn't have a business. So, and you wouldn't be able to make your money, and the government, and I know the government takes their fair share, and they take way too much. They take more than their fair share, and the red tape and everything else. However, it is still different from any other country in the world. So there is no other country that allows businesses to pop up and start like this one. So it just means that you can choose what you buy, what you sell. You can own your own private property. Then there are, the communist countries. It's like the business owns a good portion of it. In Brazil, you had to be approved by the government, the federal government, to open a business. If they did not like your idea, it was a definite no. If you didn't know the right people, if you didn't give the government the right amount of money. And so the people from Brazil will come to the United States and start their business, and then sell everything back. Because if the government in Brazil liked your product, it was no longer your product. It became theirs. So, and that's just how it worked. In New Zealand, if you were approved by the federal government to start your business, if you were approved, you had to make $1 million in revenue in your first year. It was a requirement. So they were trying to start incubators to keep that from, because those were sheltered in some way from the federal government, so that they didn't have to prove $1 million in the first year. They had 3 years to do it. And but can you imagine in your business, your idea, having to do not profit, just revenue, $1 million in revenue in your first year? So talk about pressure. So anyway, so that brings me to this competition. There are some words on here that, people, monopolies and monopolistic competition and perfect competition. And one of the things is that you really need to know where you fall in this. And most of you will never be a monopoly or an oligopoly. An oligopoly is like the utility companies. So they're kind of on they're, like we have Black Hills for natural gas. You can't get natural gas anywhere else unless you do it on your own. You can get your own propane, you can do this other stuff, but you have to be set up. But if you're in the city of Lincoln, everyone has an ordinance, so you're probably not going to be that. You're either going to fall in the perfect competition or the monopolistic competition category. And you need to know which one you are, because if you're in perfect competition, which everybody wants competition, and you want competition because what it does is it helps regulate prices. So perfect competition, though, the price is set for you because there are so many people doing what you are doing. So if you live in the perfect competitive world, there are like software apps, because they've just been coming out like crazy. They all have to start at roughly the same price, $1.99, whatever, just to get bought on Apple. And it isn't until you start proving yourself that you can actually move up that scale. But a perfect competitive market is like lawn mowing. You can get into it, get out of it with very little cost. All the prices are roughly the same anywhere in the city. And you do it till you don't want to do it anymore. If the industry states that the price goes up, you can try to make the price go up, but if somebody else comes along that has a lower price than you, it's easy for your competitor to knock you off of that contract. What you want is to be in the monopolistic competitor side, because that means you're a little more focused, you're a little more featured, you have a niche maybe. That means that you can control your own pricing and you can control your own product and how it looks. So that's kind of where you want to be. That's why, I know that Brooke worked with you to try to create, a niche. How do you stand apart? This is where the book, The Purple Cow, comes in. Have you all read The Purple Cow? So if you haven't, you should. So it's one of those things that you need to know how you are standing apart from everybody else. That's just, it's necessary. So here's a list of economic indicators. How many of you know what they are? Have you listened to them? Do you know what your interest rates are today? Do you know what's going on with the Fed? Is it good, bad, indifferent? Do you know what they said yesterday? They kept the interest rates steady. They didn't make any changes to it at all. So you have to know what that means to you.
So Tim, does anyone know what the government has done within the last hour, though?
Probably not.
I'm not to make light, but it's like, that we should be aware, but you turn in wherever, even the reliable sources, and sorry for interrupting you. I thought you were asking for answers. Even the reliable sources, they can't keep up with the changes that are going on and what's happening and all the variables that go into it.
Right, it is. And if you work in a market like yours, where you're dealing with finances, interest rates, and currency market, that's crucial to you. You need to understand what the Federal Reserve is doing. You need to understand, what government policy is. And those two things are very different. Politicians make the policies. The Federal Reserve controls the interest rates and the banks. So, You have to know who does what and how they work together or don't work together. Consumer price index is huge for anybody that sells a product. You have to know what people are willing to pay. Right now, I know that the airlines, got hit hard for a year and a half. I know that, but man, are they making up for it now. And we're willing to pay it. So there isn't no price gouging that's going on, because if they can increase the price by 20, 30, 50, 100%, and people still pay it, then it's not considered price gouging.
Try
People
rental
don't
cars.
like it, but they pay it.
So Tim, on that note, the thing is it's not necessarily that we want to pay it. It's we're given no choice. If you want to go from Los Angeles to Omaha without driving, you have to pay whatever they're going to ask.
Well, but there's a choice.
Okay.
That's a choice.
But I mean, for you as a businessman.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, I'm listening.
Yeah, that's right. But it is a choice. And the choice is, because we have technology, you don't have to pay the price. Now, is it the exact same meeting or the exact same as being there in person and doing, the interacting? No, it's not. It's really not. But the choice is to pay it or not. So and most people can come up with the business reason to do it. They can come up with the personal reason to do it. They can come up with, one of the case studies that I did recently was when I think 2011, when the earthquake and the tsunami hit Japan. All right. Well, airlines weren't willing to put their pilots and crews at risk. Okay. Well, aviation has a lot of regulations, because they would fly over from the United States and they were required to spend the night because of too much airtime, travel time. So they would have to go to a part of the country that wasn't affected by radiation, fly in, pick people up, and then fly back out. Well, the tickets were going for $4,000 a ticket. But the airplane was full. So those who could afford it did. They complained about it a lot, but they paid it. So that's the thing, is they had other options. They could get out of the radiated area. Was it ideal? No. But so these are the things. And when we start looking at the complexities of economics, I mean, these are the indicators. It's true. But what else is going on that's going to surround why we do what we do? Just like unemployment right now and wages. Unemployment in Nebraska, they tout in Nebraska how low our unemployment rate is all the time. And it sounds awesome. But for you all, that's having a low unemployment rate is horrible. It means that if you eventually want employees, there's nobody to come work for you. So there's nobody looking for a job. And if they are looking for a job, it's because they're unhappy where they are, or you have to steal them away, which means that you have to pay them more than what they were making. So I'm working with a company right now, and they are in that exact situation. They need somebody who can come in and run the office. But the person that they want is already doing that somewhere else. So, and it's not only just the wage, there has to be a bonus structure, and there has to be all these other benefits that come along with it that cost you money just to get help. So understanding the employment rate of the country doesn't, when they give us the employment rate of the country, it's like, okay, that's bad. What you want to know is the unemployment rate of where you live. That's the most important one. Because unless you're doing business around the world, and you're going to have a satellite or anything like that, that's all you really need to know is where you live. So there is a business cycle. Everybody needs to know their business cycle, how it works. And I always ask entrepreneurs, I said, do you know when your busy times are? And if the answer is no, then you're not paying attention. It's like, well, I'm always busy. Okay, great answer. I'm assuming you are always busy, but I'm talking about your business, not you. If you're always busy at a time when you are in a recessionary period, it's probably, hopefully, because you're trying to do more marketing. But you need to know this is a very typical cycle, and a recessionary period in a business cycle is not a bad thing. It's a slow time. That means that you build up product. That means you start marketing, you create more interest and enthusiasm. Now, if we go more than 2 quarters in a downward trend, which we have, we go into what's called a depression. So back in 2007, 2008, it was actually a worse depression than the big one back in the 20s. So by standard, but they would never call it. So the D word has been retired. So they will never call anything that we have again, ever, a depression. So, because it makes us physically depressed, and it takes so much longer to recover, not just economically, but mentally from it. So they won't use that word anymore. So they will use the R word, but as soon as you say the R word, we go into one mentally. And when we go into recession, people stop buying. That's the number one thing. The consumer, they just stop buying, and because we're savers. We're pack rats. We will save for the day where nothing is available and we have to survive on our own. We do have that skill. I'm not sure everybody has it, but we do have it. It is in us, and so people stop buying. Does anybody know what the indicators are of coming out of recession? There are 2. There are 2 sales that they look at when people, and none of you are in these industries, so I'm not sure that you would know. So Brooke might know. So when women start buying makeup again, all right, and when men buy underwear. So I kid you not, those are 2. If we are in a true recession, those are the 2 things. When men start buying underwear and women start buying makeup and shoes, I think shoes fall in there as well. That means that we now have money coming in and we're a lot more comfortable with it, because, yeah. And I am so not one of these people, but apparently there are people out there, guys out there, that will wear underwear down to the very last thread. So, and that's just because it's like, well, why? Why do you need new? Nobody's going to see it but me. All right, fine. So, but that's been an indicator for a long time now. Of course, there's housing, there's all this other stuff. I mean, Lincoln in and of itself is not in a recession by any indicator. So my neighbor is a realtor, and when I talked to her, I guess, wow, that would have been back in May. There were only 300 houses for sale in Lincoln at the time. And so it's like, well, 300, no, that's not. We need 3,000 houses for sale at any given time, because we have 30,000 people who move into Lincoln. And I don't know if anybody knew this, but we have 30,000 people who move into Lincoln every year. So we are one of the fastest growing cities in the state. It's never recognized as that. So that's why there are no apartments. That's why there's no houses available. That's why apartments are going up just as quick as they can put them up. We're getting brand new housing communities put up. Now, the thing is that we now have to have all the services to support all of these people moving in. So we don't have enough restaurants, we don't have enough grocery stores, we don't have enough schools, and we definitely do not have enough hospitals. So scarcity isn't just raw materials and resources, not just raw materials, it's the resources that go along with it. So it actually impacts how we look at a city. So if a company is coming in, they look at all of these other components that will help, with economic development. So, and if none of it's there, and this is where the entrepreneurs come in. So if you understand how your city works and how it's growing, and you can fit some of that, and if you can position yourself to become a need, even though you're really truly a want, but a need, then you'll do just fine. So now sometimes you have to change the laws and everything. And so without getting into all the supply and demand curves and all this other stuff that go along with it, there are, one of the factors that you need to know is that people who produce want to make money. People who buy don't want to spend money. All right. Those are the two things that you need to know about supply and demand. The more that a supplier can get for it, the more they want out on the market. So the lower the price on the demand side, the more the business owners want. So there is right now isn't, you can't really judge it by what's going on in the economy right now, but mostly supply and demand will meet in the middle. And the demand and the supply will actually come to what's called an equilibrium, and it will set the price. Suppliers don't set it, demanders don't set it, the economy and the market sets it. So where you are, where you live, it's like you can try to go above it, you can try to go below it, but if you go below the price, that means that you are substandard. So think about that when you're setting your prices. Know what your market is. Never give your stuff away, ever give your stuff away. Don't undersell yourself. So I had a friend who had a company, and we were talking one night over a cocktail, and he's like, man, he goes, I'm booked out for a year and a half. I go, why are you booked out a year and a half? I'm like, Dan, you're not that good, he's like, I don't know, man. It's like, and so we started talking about it, and he had some of the lowest prices in the region for what he did. And I'm like, that's why, Dan, it's not because of you and your abilities. I said, it's because you're cheap. So I always said, when you can get about 40% of the people to say no to you, then you're probably in about the right percentage or right price range. So you don't want everybody to say yes to you. It's like, if they can't afford you, then there's probably a reason why. And if they want your services and they know how good you are, they'll afford you. So the elasticity of demand, we talked about this. If you're in a market, where if the price changes and the demand is still there, then you are considered what's called inelastic. But if the price changes and the demand changes, meaning the prices goes up and people stop buying, it's because you're considered what's inelastic. That's a want or a need kind of situation. So just know where you are and where you fall on that scale. So right now, there's a heavy demand on things because of the situation that we're in. We were put in because of the pandemic. We don't have a lot of supply, so the prices are going up. But I can tell you, once we get to the point now, if you go to the grocery stores, so I use Lysol, can of Lysol spray. Try to buy that a year ago, because the news came out and said it kills 99.9% of the coronavirus. You couldn't buy a can of Lysol. And if you found one, it was $15 to $20 a can. So now go look for a can of Lysol. It's $8, which is still about $4 higher than what it used to be, but at least there's some on the shelf. There's hand sanitizers on the shelf. There are cleaning wipes on the shelves now. There's all kinds of things. How much do you think, the people who are changed their business to sell masks, where do you think they're falling right now? Because mask mandates are going down. All right. So know where you fit, know where you lie, know where you contribute to the economy, know what it can do for you. Like I said, the economy is not political. The economy is what it is. So we tend to think of it as a political tool. Can it be affected by politics? Yes, by all means. Does it have to be? Not at all. Politics is politics. But what the government does and what they dictate and bring into law will affect you, no matter what side of that aisle you are on. So know it. So I don't care whether you like, the president, before or after, or those to come. It doesn't matter whether you like them or not. So, and one, it's not the president. The president does sign the bill, sign the law. That's true, but who actually constructs them? So know your structures, know how it works, know who is, so make sure the people in there that are going to help you the most are there working for you. That's all you got to do. Is make sure that they work for you. So anyway, know how you fit. It's not always a pretty picture. If you start reading a whole bunch of economic journals, it's like, I don't even like economic journals, for crying out loud. Ugh. They're horrible. So, but there are a lot of things out there that affect you, and the decisions that are made that affect you. And if it doesn't mean anything to you, fine, let it go by. If there's something that makes you sit back and say, whoa, what just happened there? You might want to do a little more research to find out on what it is, because it will affect you, whether you like it or not. So anyway, so that's my little economic talk for today. So does anybody have questions?
Yeah.
I'm going to stop sharing this on any of that. So
Questions, comments?
you're welcome, Dusty. So
Mr. Radway, you always have a comment.
Yes, I made a note. How about large companies right now? How do they manage through this whole process in terms of the impact of economies or of the marketplaces on those right now? I mean, it seems like to be able to get employees is almost impossible. To get raw materials for production is almost impossible.
Well, so
and
this
what
is
impact
where,
is that going to have on inflation? I guess that's the second part of it.
yeah. Well, I mean, and then unfortunately, it's like corporations cannot be nimble and flexible, not nearly as nimble and flexible as you can, because you can change a direction, you can change your thought, you can change your marketing, you can change how things work. Corporations, there are some of them, some of the big liquor companies had to change in order to create more hand sanitizer stuff. So I've got a bottle of Tito's hand sanitizer. So I've got a cousin that works down there in Texas, and so she sent us all some, and some vodka too, but we weren't supposed to tell him about that. Anyway, so they have to try to adapt in some way, shape, or form. And it is difficult. And what people do is they raise prices, because when they start raising prices in the large corporate world, then the demand will drop, and it will slow things down. And that's exactly what they need to do, is they have to slow down.
I also appreciated your comment about the 24-hour news feeds. I thought it was interesting yesterday. The feds did not raise rates now, but the subsection question was, or the comment was, we look to increase it by 2023. And the media and the markets went crazy. I mean, the stock dropped about 250 points, not because they weren't raising it, because of what they were projecting. Our loving 24-hour news meetings loves to sell fear.
Yes, they do. And the other thing is that the stock market is not our economy, by the way.
No, it is not. It is not.
It is a portion of it. That's true. But look at all the companies that are involved in it. How big are they?
Yeah.
So that's not the majority of the country. So the stock market is part of it. So when the stock market rallies, that's great. But I always tell people, I said, it's a very emotional creature, because as soon as it hears some bad news, bam, it falls. and it might not even be our situation. It could be something that happens in Italy or in Greece or one of our partners or Japan or whatever. It'll fall, and it had nothing to do with us. So it's not the stock market is not our economy. So
And it's not something we react to either.
Correct.
Yeah.
By the way, Gordon, thank you for the need.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
In my micro econ class, under the resources section, I don't like the material that's in there, so I have them watch the Lorax,
Oh.
the original one, because everyone needs a need. And it talks about scarcity and resources and overproduction and demand and all this other stuff. It's actually it's a very good. I know that Dr. Seuss has been canceled and all this other stuff, but it's still very good. So it gets
Find something that all people need. Yeah.
that's right. So no, you can't get paint either. That's true, Dusty. It's like there's a lot of things that are on the blocks right now that cannot be available.
So Ken,
Oh,
go ahead,
yeah.
Gordon.
Oh, I like what Luke said.
Yeah, I was intrigued. You mentioned the thing around like as far as like setting prices, that that it's kind of or like one measure is if 40% of the people are rejecting your price, and I guess setting a price seems to be tricky or mysterious to me, I guess. I don't know if there's more that you can say about that. I mean, it sounds like the way you're describing it, in order to set a good price, you kind of need to have like some volume of interactions, so that then you can say, okay, well, so here's above this price, whatever, like so you can actually see people's behavior at different prices.
Right. So and it's a test that you don't want to work with a whole lot, but the thing is that if you start looking at your company and you look at, if you start telling people, okay, it costs $200 to do what I do, and no one balks at it and says, oh yeah, okay, cool, I can do that. If everyone says that, then something is wrong. So that means your price is too low. It doesn't necessarily mean they want you. It doesn't necessarily mean they like you. It just means they're willing to pay the price that you offer. So once you start raising it and you start getting no's, so if you raise it to 250 or 300 and you get 3 or 4 no's, but mostly yeses on that, wherever your comfort level is, but you need people to start saying no to you in order to understand if your pricing structure is correct. Because there are a lot of new businesses that think it's like, well, if I price it low and everybody wants in, then I'll be in business. It's like, no, all they want is the low price. That's all they want. They don't want you.
So I may have to adjust my marketing strategy so I get a larger volume of interactions, I guess.
Yes, you need to. So yes, you need to have the people coming in, for you to make the proposal for them to say no. Now, I don't know exactly, what it is that you do, but if it's very targeted, if you have a very specific client, and you can't do an exceptionally large volume, then you really have to look at your market. You have to find out what other people charge that do what you do. And you have to figure out, okay, if they can do it at this price, is there something I do differently that can allow me to increase that price a little bit more? So it might not necessarily be your the pricing structure, but it's the services that you offer in order to get that price. Because what you want them to do is see a value for the price that they're given, not that it's cheap. That's the hard part, is figuring that part out. But if you look at your market and you see what everybody else is charging, and you say it's like, well, it takes me 4 or 5 more hours or whatever to do what I do, and they get this quality out of it. So we had a client early on, in the suites, and he was doing stock market indicators. And he was a little slow, but he had a software guy that lived. Do you remember, Brooke? Was it? You remember Shay? And was his coder was in Germany or someplace like that?
Yeah, I don't remember where the coder was, but wasn't here.
It wasn't here. So he had to go by the coder's time schedule in order to get stuff done. And the questions to him were always, what are you doing differently than the free apps that are on, that are now coming out? Because this is a time before they all were coming out, but you could still go online and get information about the stock market. And every time he would list out, it was everything I could find on Yahoo. I mean, it was everything I could find. I mean, and so it's like, you've got to be doing something different. And eventually, unfortunately, it came to a point where he had to make the decision that he couldn't go forward with it because it just wasn't profitable for him, because most of the information that he was supplying, you could get for free. Now that is a very hard pricing structure to compete against. Very hard. So if you are competing against free, you better give a reason for people to subscribe. So just like Hulu, there's so much you can get for free, and some TV shows that you can get for free, some movies you can get for free. You just download the app and you can watch. But if you want the really good stuff, so you have to pay. So we give them a taste, and then you have to give more. But look at all the apps now. I mean, how much does Disney cost to subscribe for a month?
$7.99, I think.
$7.99. Discovery Plus, $4.99. Netflix is the most expensive now, and it's at $14.99.
15, I think.
Is it 15? Yeah. So this is why you have to understand who your competition is, and you have to understand your market, and you have to understand, their pricing structure. If you're competing against a major corporation, we had a printer in there, and she was competing against Vistaprint. Now, I can't stand Vistaprint because I would sit at my desk and I would have somebody come in, and I would line their card up with all of the others that had come into my office. And they all looked, because it was one of the first ones that you could get for free on Vistaprint, and it was black and yellow. And I would line them up and I say, now, which one are you? Yeah, but it was free. Right. I get it. But I have 5 of you now. How do you set yourself apart? So, and that was great for people who didn't want to pay for anything. And so that was one of the points that I had to get across to this business, is that you are competing with free. Now, granted, it's not good, but you're competing with it.
Jody, did you have a comment?
Well, when you talked about your 85% earlier in your talk, Tim, my understanding is if it's not 85%, it's really close, that of the businesses in the United States, that 85% is small business and entrepreneurs, just like this whole Perk Up is geared towards. So that's very encouraging that we are a huge part of the economy. You
are, and you get very little credit for it. So that's the bad part. And that's why networks like these need to understand what's going on, and they need to speak up. So, because it depends on your industry, which will determine whether you're categorized. And I learned this from working with the SBA. It depends on your industry. So if you are in manufacturing, 500 employees is still considered a small business. So you, with yourself or 1 or 2 employees, are competing with 500 employees and a CEO, and all this other. I mean, it's fascinating how it structures out, and every industry is different. So you have to know where you fall. Just like when the state was giving away free money, I don't remember what that program was, but The first year, very little went out simply for the fact that nobody knew about it, nobody understood how to do it, and the application process was phenomenal. So they took it down to a one-page application, and all the money was gone within the first 10 days. And you know who got it? Dentists. Because the dental association got a hold of it. And they understood, and they researched it, and they understood how to do it, and they put all of their dentists in, and each of them got $10,000 free. And no other business got it that second year other than dentists. That's because the association, whatever dental association is here in Nebraska, understood what was going on, and they put everybody in it. So yeah, so that's why if you went to a dentist and they ended up with a new chair, there you go.
Well, we have time for one more question or comment. Anybody? All right. Well,
I guess I'll throw one out there real
yeah.
quick. How do you feel about creative compensation structures? Maybe, for example, Bitcoin.
Oh, Luke, we don't have enough time for that. Okay, so real quick, Bitcoin and all those other things, because they are not actually technically currency, they are still a commodity. They are still traded on the stock market. They cannot be seen as currency until they have a stable structure, my opinion.
Well, that's how you might get an employee who might not otherwise work for you, is offer compensation in a commodity.
Yeah, you could, but it's just one of the things. It's not stable. So, see you, Jody. So, all right.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. Join us next week. We will be on Zoom and then back in person.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.